Welcome. Good evening. Hope you guys are having a good night. Always good to see a couple people in here when we're ready to go. This is Anonymous Live, number 79. This is a place where we will be listening to anonymous calls for the next couple hours. Of course, I'm assuming everybody in here at this point probably already knows this. But we try to give everybody a few minutes to get in here at the top of the stream. What's up? I've had an eventful week. My air conditioning is giving me trouble. Got people in here working on it this week. It's kind of crazy. I had to go the last 48 hours with no HVAC in my basement, which is where I spend the most of my time working. It's where I am right now. It's been very cold down here. Very cold basement. I have a thermal heater in front of me, which is why I might look a little orange tonight. It's pretty cold here, guys. I don't know where you guys are watching from, but I'm in Tennessee, and it gets cold here this time of year. What a time of year to have heat trouble. So it goes. So it goes. We have a Discord channel that is an extension of this project. It's completely free to you. It's a community of around 900 people, slowly growing but steadily growing. A good community of people that are willing to just be real. There are support channels in there for people who want to talk about difficult topics with an open-minded group, or even one-on-one with someone that you might get to know in the community that you want to share something with one-on-one. There are one-on-one channels. There's most of the people in the Anonymous Live server are just hanging out, talking about video games, books. There's a book club channel. There's a food recipe channel. We just try to, we've tried to make this place a valuable place for anybody and everybody, including people who need to talk about difficult stuff like we do here often on this stream. So that is, the link to that is in the video description. You can find that there. It's totally free. We make nothing on it. This entire project is a labor of love. It takes nothing but time and money from me and time from all of the volunteer mods who mod here, and also the mods in the Discord. Everyone here is a volunteer. I consider myself a volunteer, again, because this is not a profitable project. If it ever were to become profitable, the mission is to turn it into a nonprofit, to make it a good partner for other charities in the space whose missions are adjacent to that of Anonymous Lives. So this is a very different place than you might be used to if you have been following my content for any length of time. This is a place where we're just chill and real, and nothing's off the table. So long as you remain anonymous, you can call, and we'll have a conversation here live about whatever's on your mind. No names, no locations. We hang up on you if you dox yourself, because we want this to be a place that you can always feel good about. We don't want you to say something you might regret 5 years from now. So our only mechanism to protect that is to hang up on people that dox themselves. I want to add that the Anonymous Live Discord server is not completely anonymous. It's just the name of the project. There are some anonymous channels in there. There's one anonymous channel, but you've got to follow some steps in order for it to be truly anonymous. You got to be careful using that anonymous channel. Some people misuse it accidentally. So yeah, that's the deal. We'll be here for about 2 hours. This is a brand new channel, and things have been, since we've started this new channel, things have started a bit slower on these streams than we're used to. Of course, this whole project is very slow because it's not entertainment, it's not entertaining, it's not the point. But sometimes we wait here for a few minutes for a caller to call in. It's all good. We'll just hang, we'll chat, And yeah, I see tonight we have Easy and Raymag as mods. Shout out to our mods. They're the best. Our mods give so much here. I'm grateful. They're amazing. Seriously, some of the best mods I've ever seen. I wish, it's actually like I wish the community could see what the mods do behind the scenes, because they give so much and they care so much, and there's so much deliberation that goes on behind the scenes. So much that the community doesn't see that the mods do. Our mods are simply the best. Props to the mods. Any Thanksgiving plans? What are you guys doing for Thanksgiving? I'll be with my cousin. I've got my kids this year, which is awesome. Thanksgiving is my absolute favorite holiday, hands down. Christmas is great, don't get me wrong, and I like all the holidays, of course, but Thanksgiving is like, it's a gluttonous holiday. It's the it's the one where we celebrate gluttony. What is there not to like? So I'm so excited. I've got my kids. I'll be with my family, with my cousin and his family. It'll be awesome. What are you guys doing? We'll come back to that. I'm getting a call. We're going to jump into a call. Hello, thanks for calling.
Hi, I'm a 20. Say that again?
Thanks for calling. Can we start with your age and a brief intro?
Yeah, I'm 23. Been working some, just various jobs. I guess I've found it hard to get into my career, and I guess what I'm calling to talk about now is just, I don't know, feeling like not successful, like a bit of a failure. I've dropped out of school several times, and I bounced between a lot of jobs, and it just doesn't seem like I hold one for very long, and every time I get one that's in my area of study that I've completed successfully, I don't hold it for very long, and so it just feels like I don't know, experiencing a lack of success. I guess I'm barely making it, and it feels like I've barely been making it for 5 years. So
You're up against a lot of resistance. Sounds like you just keep hitting roadblocks.
Mm-hmm. For sure. That's a great way to sum it up,
Is there a common reason you can pinpoint that you could attribute the roadblocks to? Is it, in other words, like, can you identify something that maybe you're learning to grow through that could actually be valuable to learn? Or is it like you're in a bad setting, or you're going after the wrong things? I'm just like throwing a wide blanket over it because I don't know what you're up against. What of what I just said resonated, if anything?
Right. So I guess, like, with school, there's two things I've learned about myself with school, but I guess I don't know how it translates into a solution. And those two things are that I'm a tactile learner, so I don't do well in just, like long extended lectures. I gotta practice the things that I'm learning in order to retain them. And with I guess the other piece is there's no other way to say it. If I don't care about what I'm learning, I don't pursue it. So, like, if the first time I went to a 4-year college, I went to the classes that pertain to my major, excuse me, and all my gen eds and stuff. I wasn't going. I didn't care about them. I was like, what is English 101 has to do with audio engineering. It's stupid, but I know that that's the wrong attitude to take with school, and not something you hear from someone in their 20s usually. So,
Are you ADHD by chance?
I am diagnosed in kindergarten.
Interesting. Have you read any books on ADHD? I'm not an expert, but I've read some books on it. It's been suggested to me that I'm on the autism spectrum. It's been suggested by others that I'm ADHD, so I'm curious about these things. That's why I asked the question. It sounded like a very ADHD thing to say when you said, if I'm not interested in it, I can't do it. That's a very ADHD thing to say, in my opinion. Have you read any books on, actually, wait, I'm going too far. Have you experienced any trauma from your childhood maybe, or even recently?
So much. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say so much, because I've been watching Anonymous life for a while, and I don't want to say that I have it as bad as some people. I don't want to come off as like, oh, my life is so bad, and people who have been through much more than me. I don't want to belittle them or anything, but my parents split up and got back together 3 different times throughout my childhood. I lost my grandma when I was in 7th grade, and she was like a daily part of our lives. She was either we were at her house or she was at our house every day of the week. Cheated on by a girlfriend of 3.5 years. I don't know. I guess those are the ones that come to mind right now when you say trauma.
So it's again, I'm not an expert on any of this, but I've read a bunch of books on this. I can hold a conversation about it at least, and it's a topic that has had some resonance in my own life, which is why I'm asking these questions. I'm also reading a book about trauma right now by a clinical psychologist named Gabor Mate. I'm still reading this book. I haven't finished it yet because there's been so much going on. But this book, The Myth of Normal, I'm going to put it in the chat for you because this book it's blowing my mind right now. I've been trying to get through this book for about probably a month and a half at this point. It's about 700 pages and it's dense. It's not an easy read. But this book is blowing my mind. And the reason it's blowing my mind is because Gabor Mate used to be an MD who would see patients and just give them pills. His job was to not quite a psychiatrist, but it was his job to diagnose people with certain mental conditions and give them medication or treatments for them. And then now he's in his 80s and he has had a complete reversal of philosophy in the later part of his career. He's still working. He's still writing books. He just put out this book, The Myth of Normal, this year. It's brand new. And it's blowing my mind. This book is about trauma and how trauma can affect the outcome of a diagnosis like ADHD or many different diagnoses like ADHD. We'll focus on that one since that's the one that you said you happened to relate with. This book runs contrary to pretty much all of conventional medicine and psychology because the conventional understanding is that you diagnose someone based on characteristics or symptoms, and then you just pump them full of pills in order to mitigate the symptoms, in order to kind of neutralize them and turn them into a normal human. And I think that's what makes this book, it's a great title. He's given it The Myth of Normal. The premise of the book is that we're pumping people full of pills. And I don't know if you're on medication, but this book is valuable. I'm sensing it might be an interesting read for you regardless, because it sounds like you're up against some very real challenges in your professional life, in your personal life, that might be attributed to the ADHD, and I don't know that. I'm just speculating. I don't know anything I'm saying to anybody here, which is part of the reason we try to keep the calls short. I'm not a professional. I'm just a guy who's been through some stuff and cares, and I try to kick forward some things that have been helpful for me. So I just try to be very clear. That's what I'm doing here. This is basically a cocktail party, and we're talking. But this book is so radical because Gabor Mate says, by the way, I put the link in the chat for you to the Goodreads link if you want to check out the description of the book. Might be worth checking out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've actually already have it. I have it pulled up in a new tab.
Okay, great. So this book, what makes it so interesting is he's saying, like, look, people don't just... His thesis is that it's circular logic, the way that these psychologists diagnose people today. One of the most powerful parts of the book I've read so far is a part where he says the way psychologists diagnose things is they say, well, how do we know they have ADHD? Well, because they have poor impulse control, lack of focus, and disinterest in things that don't interest them. Things like this. And then they're like, well, how do you know they have poor impulse control and lack of focus and lack of interest in things that interest them? Well, because they have ADHD. And it's like this, he presents this argument that it's this very circular logic that conventional psychology and medicine has been promulgating for decades. And he presents an argument that things like ADHD actually stem from trauma, which is a radical argument. It's, as far as I know, it's never been made before. This is a brand new argument as far as I know. I've never heard it before. And he's been under some scrutiny for saying it, but this is a guy who's been diagnosing people and pumping them full of pills for decades, for his whole life. He's 80 years old and still writing books. It's wild.
Sure.
And so I don't know what I'm saying sounds like to you. I don't know what that sounds like to you, but I just felt like maybe that book might be something that would be interesting for you to read. Because if you have ADHD, and you mentioned that a struggle to carry through with things that don't interest you, you might find some kind of value from the kind of the suggestions Gabor Mate makes in this book. And I'm not going to make any prescriptions or recommendations here because I'm not a professional, but this book it's meaning a lot to me right now in reading it. And it seems to be resonating with a lot of people. He's been on a bunch of big podcasts recently because of this book, and he's no new. He's very prolific professional. He's been around for a long time, has a very extensive reputation. So it's not like he's nothing new, but the fact that he's saying these things is really interesting. And I've been talking for a while, so what does that sound like to you when we're talking about this stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring this like alternate philosophy up because it's one that I, despite being 23, I still argue with my mother every time I see her because she thinks I should be on this medication that I've been prescribed. There's been various ADHD prescriptions that I've tried throughout the years. And all of them, and she doesn't quite know what I mean, and I don't know if it'll make sense to you or anyone here, but the best way I can say it is that I feel like when I'm on those medications, it sets all of my emotions to zero. So like what things that would normally make me angry, they don't make me angry. Things that would make me happy, they don't make me happy. It's like I just don't really have emotions, and I hate that. But we have seen an improvement in my ability to do all of the things that I just spoke about earlier when I'm on my medication. So the argument that we have constantly is what's more important, doing well in life but not enjoying it, or enjoying life but not doing well in it.
Right.
So this is definitely a book that would interest me, I guess, is what I'm saying. Because if this is a guy that's saying, yeah, actually the whole medication trying to turn people normal maybe isn't the right way to go about things. That is certainly something that resonates with me.
What happened with your girlfriend who cheated on you? What was that like?
Yeah. So we met a long time before we started dating. So we were friends for a while. And then when both of us were old enough to date, which was my junior year of high school, so what, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we started dating. Great through high school, great relationship. When I left for college, long distance was hard for her. Not to make any excuses, I just know that even before she cheated, it just was difficult for her. It was difficult for both of us, I guess. But we made it work. I drove down to see her all the time, and it worked for a year. And then when she went off to college, let's see, August, September, October, November, we made that work with her in one city and that wasn't our hometown, and me in another, for about 4 months. And she was getting more and more distant throughout all of that. She started appearing in her social media posts drunk, or very obviously drunk. But she wouldn't tell me or admit to it, when we would talk to each other. And then one evening, I was playing a video game with one of my roommates at the time, because I lived in a 4-person suite style dorm. And she called to tell me that she had slept with someone else, and she was really sorry, and that whatever time I needed to take to figure things out was okay, and that she would abide by whatever decision I made. So I said, give me a week. I'm going to talk to, the people that I think in my life are wise. My wisdom circle is what I call it. Just getting opinions and advice and working through how that made me feel. And I went back to her in a week and said, all right, I want to try to make this work. And she said, no way in hell, why would you think that would happen? And I said, because you said so. And she said, I still remember it to this day, quote, I guess I can see why you would think that's what I meant. And then I said, so we're over then? And she said, yep, and hung up the phone. And I have not spoken to her in person or on the phone since.
How long ago was that? 3.5 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Are you over her?
I used to tell myself yes, but people whose opinions I hold very dear to me have been making me aware that actually probably not.
So you were cheated on, and when asked for your response, you didn't react. You took time to consult some people you trusted, confide in them, get advice, suggestions, then came back and said, I actually have it within me to still make it work, and she shot you down.
Yes.
My friend, what I'm hearing, it takes a lot of empathy to do that. It takes a ton of empathy to not react in that situation. I mean, you guys weren't married, it doesn't sound like, but regardless, you were in a monogamous commitment.
I had been looking at rings. I guess in my head, probably obviously not in her head, but I was ready to take that step.
Yeah, that wasn't even worth it for me to mention that. I apologize. The point is, you guys were in a monogamous commitment together, and she broke that. She broke your trust, and you didn't react. It takes a tremendous amount. It says a lot about your character that, I mean, at least from your description of it, it sounds like you said, it sounds like the result was you wanted to make it work. That in and of itself is not normal. A lot of people don't have that within them. But it also sounds like you didn't react in the moment. It also sounds like there wasn't screaming or like, how could you do this? I'm sure your heart was broken.
Well, it 100% it was broken. Yes. I guess I didn't press her for details. I didn't want the details, but let's just put it this way. I had suspected it for maybe a month prior. So it wasn't like 100% out of nowhere. But I mean, in the context of a 3.5-year relationship, 1 month is pretty sudden, you know? And I guess I didn't think it was cheating. I just knew something was wrong. You know, like I said, I was seeing her appear drunk in social media and she wouldn't tell me. And, you know, not that I would ever dream to dictate what a woman can and can't wear, but just seeing a style change on her own from, you know, conservative to more liberal, more revealing, more sexualized clothing, I guess I would say. You know, it was definitely in my head. Like, it was a possibility. I guess I just didn't want to, like, confront that. And then to have it,
right,
you know, explode like that suddenly. You know, it was like...
That's what I'm saying.
Hey, I have 3 other...
That's what I'm recognizing. It's not what I'm saying. It's what I'm giving back to you. I'm telling you what I'm hearing you say is that you went through this horrible experience with someone you dated for almost 4 years, and you got red flags that they were being dishonest. Then you come to find out they cheated on you, and in the moment when you're learning this, you didn't react. You said, let me take some time to process this. And you took the time, and you came back and said, you know what? No big deal. Let's make it work. And she hung up on you. And that is, I don't mean to repeat it to make you relive it, because I understand that you're still working through some of that. It sounds like I'm repeating it to you to try to help you understand what I'm hearing on the line here, which is what sounds like a really special kind of person that can be betrayed and not react. You know, in some of our greatest movies, when betrayal happens, the protagonist reacts, and we celebrate that. I'm thinking of movies like Braveheart. I'm thinking of movies like, there's so many good movies. Yeah, I can't even, it's impossible to pick one. I don't know why I landed on Braveheart. I haven't even seen it in like 12 years probably, but that one comes to mind. Like Mel Gibson, we celebrate that. Like they killed his wife, and like, sorry, spoiler alerts. If you haven't seen Braveheart, that's on you. You know, they kill his wife, and he's like, and he just gives it back to him. We celebrate that. And the point is that, like, it's a really special kind of person that has restraint and restraint. You demonstrated a lot of restraint, it sounds like. And I'm repeating this story back to you, I hope I'm not making you relive it, since it sounds like you're still processing it. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you seem to have a serious amount of depth of character, a serious amount of empathy, a serious amount of understanding and patience and kindness. And these are the traits of an empath. I don't know if you've looked into whether or not you might be an empath, but you sound like an empath. And where I'm going with this is, I'm really sorry in advance, because I'm thinking of like more books for you than I've thought of for a caller in a long time, if not ever.
I'm a huge reader, so that's you should see my bookshelf. So keep them coming.
I'm about to give you like 4 or 5 more books. I'm really sorry in advance.
Awesome.
I don't like doing this. I don't like giving people this many books. I like to keep it to 1 or 2 tops. Most calls I don't even mention any books, but I'm about to dump a bunch of books on you, and I'm not telling you to buy these, because I don't know which of these will resonate with you. I don't know you. We've been talking like 20 minutes here. But another book I'm thinking of that might be interesting to check out is a book called, it's probably my most commonly talked about book on this stream. It's a book called Should I Stay or Should I Go? Surviving a Relationship with a Narcissist by Dr. Ramani Durvasula. This book has changed my life more times than I can count. I'm not saying your ex was a narcissist, but it at least sounds like it. And I'm not capable of diagnosing anyone, but I've, for whatever reason, endured many narcissistic relationships. This is a book specifically about dating, by the way, but to me, it meant many more things. This book applies if you have a parent that's a narcissist, or a boss that's a narcissist, or a colleague, or a friend, or even if you're dating a narcissist. This book is just like, if you think you might be dealing with someone that does not care about you, but they're pretending to, this book will help you get to the bottom of your feelings about that, and also identify whether or not you're dealing with someone that might not care about you at all. And they give this book, I don't know if you know Dr. Ramani. She's amazing. She's probably the world's leading expert on narcissism. She's probably done more work than anybody. So far as I know, she's done the most work on understanding narcissism. She's a PhD psychologist. She's incredible. She also has a free YouTube channel that with a bunch of videos that are adjacent to her book. And she has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. So she's been very successful in pretty much every arena she's been involved in as a psychologist. If you read that book rocked my world. And then I discovered a book called Psychopath Free. I'm putting this in the chat for you. I would not read this book first. I would definitely start with Should I Stay or Should I Go? Because it's lighter. And this next book I'm putting in the chat gets really granular. It gets very specific about this is a book you read if you know you're dealing with a psychopath of some kind. And the first one I mentioned is good for kind of figuring out if that's what's going on. And I told you I'm blowing the fire hose at you with books, so I'm really sorry. I don't like doing this because I'm doing a Hail Mary here because I don't know what it is you need, but I'm thinking of all these different books, so I'll go quick. I'm not going to spend time on any of these because I don't want to waste time, but these are the books I'm thinking of as you talk. If you get through both of those and you want something else, I would maybe check out this book. It's called Stop Walking on Eggshells. Stop Walking on Eggshells, Taking Your Life Back When Someone You Care About Has Borderline Personality Disorder. Now, the BPD is not narcissism, but they're all forms of psychopathy. So there's some crossover. I read this book and it was helpful for me because I've dealt with more narcissists than people with BPD for some reason, but I've dealt with both, and I've found, I don't know if it's just me, but I've found personally that in the past I've walked on eggshells with any kind of psychopath I've come into contact with. So they might actually sell more copies of this book. Not that they need any help, because it's a very popular book, but they might sell more copies if they just changed BPD to psychopathy, because I found it relevant outside of BPD. And then if that book is interesting, I might check out this one. This is a book called, I really don't like doing this. I'm like cringing at myself, like just naming all these books, but I'm trying to not spend too much time on this. Read the descriptions of these books. I'm not telling you to buy these. Read the descriptions of them first. This is a book called Attached, The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love by Adam Levine. I always do that. I always call him Adam Levine. It's Amir Levine. I'm so sorry, guys. It's Amir Levine, not the lead singer of Maroon 5. Amir Levine. I do that without fail every time. He's an MD, and he wrote it with Rachel Heller. And that's a good book for, it's a book on attachment style theory, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they lay out the case that there are different attachment styles that people have for romantic attachment. And this book is a book on how to identify your attachment style so that you can date more effectively, more efficiently, and waste less time on dates. I I just spent, I guarantee you I spent too much time, because I doubt that all of those apply to you, but I mentioned that all of those because I don't know what it is specifically you need. Maybe all of them apply to you. I don't know, but what of those books I mentioned, if any, stood out to you while we were talking about them?
Yeah, definitely the first two for sure, because while I'm not still with her, I'm not over her. And I think that both of those probably have some strategies about how to cope with and get rid of, lingering attachments and feelings that shouldn't really be there anymore, because she's not with me anymore. And then that dating one definitely interests me. I personally haven't stepped back into the dating pool since this happened. I just haven't felt ready. Like I said, I'm still, and as you pointed out, I'm still processing what happened, 2.5 years later. So,
right.
Yeah.
Which it might be worth, I'll link you also. That was the when you said that was the reason I went off on so many different books. But I should also link you to one more thing I feel that's relevant, which I've already talked about, but I haven't linked you to. It's Dr. Ramani's YouTube channel. When you were talking about that you haven't quite gotten over what happened, and that some people in your life have suggested that you might still be in love with her in some sense, you haven't gotten over her. I thought of that because of what Dr. Ramani talks about with respect to getting over a narcissist in a romantic sense. She talks a lot about rumination, like you can't stop ruminating over a narcissist when you break up with them. And why is that? She says it's because the narcissist, it's a common misconception that narcissists hate everyone, that they just don't care about people. But it's not true. They just have underdeveloped prefrontal cortex and limbic system, so they can't empathize in the same way that a fully developed brain can. In other words, they love you in the only way they know how. They love people, they fall in love, but it's a very limited kind of love. It's very restricted. And they make up for that by love bombing. Dr. Ramani talks a lot about love bombing. And she says, she lays out the case for it. She's never said it this explicitly, but what I hear her saying is that the reason it's so hard to get over a narcissist is because it's a synthetic kind of love. Now I'm mincing her words. I'm giving you my words on her words. What I hear her saying is it's a synthetic kind of love that they offer you. And for them, it's real. But to everyone else, it's this like concentrated, explosive, love bombing thing that they give partners. It doesn't matter if you're dating them or if they're a parent or a boss even. The way they express appreciation, respect, admiration is it's like a bomb. It's like very concentrated. And you're like, oh my God, this is great. This is amazing. I've never felt this before. That's because it's not real. It's because it's they're compensating. And that's why it's so hard getting over them, because you're like, I've never felt that way about someone before. They gave me something nobody else ever could. Nobody else ever did. And it's like, no, like they gave you something that, they did give you something nobody else could. They gave you something that was actually not real. They gave you something that was very juvenile. And it can seem like very sunshine and rainbows when you're in it because they're love bombing you. But when you're out of that, it can be very difficult to forget. And it can traumatize people for years or decades unless you know that. And so I'm mentioning this because Dr. Ramani she doesn't go into too much detail in that on her books so far that I've read, but she does on her YouTube channel. So I'm plugging her YouTube channel here for you now. These are totally free videos. And she has about 5 videos at least on rumination. If you just go to her YouTube channel and look for videos on rumination and narcissism, and just see if any of it applies to you. This might be the best place to start, actually, before you spend money and time on reading books, even if you're an avid reader. These videos are free, and she doesn't go into much detail on rumination in her books. She spent, so far as I've seen, she spends most of her time talking about rumination on her YouTube channel, which is a really smart play for her, because if people are ruminating and they want to stop, they're less likely to pick up a book. They're more likely to type it into YouTube, like how to stop ruminating. And that's a really smart play for her. It's a really smart play for her. But yeah, I'm pointing that out because I've found a lot of value on getting over rumination from her YouTube channel. So it's in the chat for you now. And yeah, so, I mean, from what I'm saying, I mean, do you feel like it's possible that your ex didn't actually care for you the way that you cared for her?
I mean, you have to say yes, right? Because you know, people make mistakes, right? That's the logic I had 3.5 years ago when she cheated. I said, you know, people make mistakes. You know, I don't know all the circumstances. We certainly haven't, you know, we've been long distance. Maybe it was a mistake, you know, in the heat of the moment. So let me take some time, think about it. I'll get back to you. And I came back to her. And I feel like if she'd cared as much as she always said she did, you know, the answer would be, of course, it was a mistake in the heat of the moment. I'm sorry, let's work through this. But no, instead it was, you don't give me what I want, so we're done.
Right.
So, yeah, you would have to say that she didn't care as much as me, right?
I mean, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I wasn't in your shoes. I'm just making sure I wasn't wasting my time on talking about this stuff.
No, you were not. I think it's very safe to say that she did not care as much as me.
Yeah. Untergang Girl from the chat is pointing out that she's mentioning something that shouldn't be so novel, but for some reason in 2022 it is, that you know, if you're apprehensive about going and buying all these books, you can get them for free at your local library for a couple weeks. I can't believe how many people forget about local libraries when I talk to callers here. So many people seem to forget that books can be free at the library, at least for a couple weeks.
For real, I feel like I'm one of the last people in this generation that like still has a library card and goes because he likes physical books.
Right. It's true. Yeah. So, what would make this a good call? And I feel like I just blew a fire hose of books at you. I really don't like doing that. I'm like cringing that I just did that, but I did that as a Hail Mary again, because I don't know which of those will be helpful. There's a chance that all of them could be, and I'd say there's a greater chance that only a couple of them might apply. There's also a chance none of them will apply, and that you've just wasted your evening here. But what would make this a good call?
You know,
and
I guess, you know, bare minimum, it's already a good call because this is probably the first time I've vocalized all of this, and that's healthy to say all of it. So that's in and of itself is good. Not to take up a bunch of time, but I don't know. I guess just if you have any advice on, you know, the whole not being able to complete school, you know, just staying focused on trying to get through. The way my mom says it is, you know, you gotta put in the work to get the result. And for me, I guess she sees putting the work in as doing all these, you know, and she's right, doing all these gen eds and stuff if I were to go back to school again, that I just don't care about. And so I guess either is there a way to care about things that you don't naturally care about, or like what's the psychology or strategy, I guess, on blogging through stuff that you hate to get to the stuff that you want?
So you made me realize I forgot another book that I meant to include with that avalanche I just dumped on you. But first I'll say, you know, life is more than problems. It has to be, or we don't find beauty and meaning in it. if life is just a series of problems, in other words, if we see life as simply a series of problems, that's the path to nihilism. And nihilism, I believe at least, is a dead-end road that does not accomplish very much. It leaves people feeling isolated, hopeless, meaningless, pointless, futile. It leads people to just kind of say, well, what's the point of any of this? There are exceptions to everything, of course. I realize there have been some prolific nihilists who've written books and things that have inspired people. But the vast majority of people I talk to wrestling with nihilism are doing just that. They're wrestling with it. They're saying, I can't stand thinking that life is just a series of setbacks and challenges and resistance and entropy. And yet entropy exists. Entropy is what pulls everything apart. Entropy is responsible for pulling apart the universe constantly. The universe is constantly expanding, and energy is constantly dissipating, and everything is constantly falling apart unless we maintain it. And that's an argument against nihilism, because people are masterful problem solvers. That's the value of human beings. We do that better than any animal on the planet. I'm going very concrete, but I'm leading to something here. We all experience setbacks in life. Life is a series of setbacks, but it's more than that. I think, if you're asking me, I don't know if I'd call this advice, but the way I see life is a gift. Life is beautiful. I might be in a different situation than a lot of people I talk to here, because some people I talk to here are much younger than me, and I'm a bit older. I've got kids. Kids are like an automatic nihilism killer. It's like once you have kids, you're just like, oh my God, life is incredible. Like, what is this? Nobody tells you the emotions that get unlocked when you have kids. It's like the volume knob. The dynamic range of life gets like
to 11.
Yeah, it's not even an 11. It's like a 100. It's like on both sides of the equation. It's not just a 100, but like if your kids do something horrible, like you feel that much deeper than like if you do something horrible or a friend does something horrible. It's like the dynamic range is just like stretched exponentially. So not to get off about my own story, but the point is that acknowledging that I realize there's a lot of people out there, younger people, your age, in their 20s. You're in a really stressful part of life that does not get enough credit, in my opinion. I think too many people in their late 30s and 40s don't give enough credit to people in their early 20s, because they're like, oh, well, let's talk to you when you're 40. Let's talk to you when you're 50. And I'm like, no, like when you're in your early 20s, you are figuring a lot of stuff out. You are trying to parse everything your parents ever taught you and sort that into some kind of operating system that can benefit you and be productive for you. I'm dancing around the question, but I'm not dodging it. I'm setting up a picture here for you. The point is that, like, yeah, life is full of problems and setbacks and challenges, and we'll go through seasons where we're taking one step forward and 5 steps back. That's just a part of life. But I think my philosophy is that a productive life is embracing those challenges and those setbacks. There's a great quote that I'll butcher. I can't remember who said this, but the universe, I can't even begin to put these words together, but something about like the universe teaches you through problems. The universe is the ultimate teacher. Somebody in the chat might have this quote. They could throw it in and correct me, but I'm dancing around the quote. I can't remember it precisely, but the thought is that, like, yeah, the universe teaches you through problems. So my philosophy is that we embrace the problems, even when they're killing us. And the only way we get through that without becoming nihilists is to find something that's beautiful to us about life and care about that. Find something that is meaningful to us in life and care about that. Why care about it? Because if you don't care for it, it's going to fall apart. Whether that's a relationship or a cause or even a pet. I think this is why people adopt pets and care for them. It's like charitable in some sense. Like, you're giving time, and like the pet doesn't like give you anything except like emotional, like comfort and like love. It's like you're, you got to find something that's beautiful to you in life and take care of it. Life can't just be about problems. Problems will be there every day. And I know I haven't directly answered your question yet, but I'm trying to paint a picture for you of what I think life is, because every day is subject to lots and lots of entropy. Every day, things are falling apart. Our cars fall apart. Our houses fall apart unless we take care of them. And so we have to, I think, I'm an existentialist, so I think that we make meaning from our choices in life, how we spend our time, what we care about, what we spend our time doing. And we make that meaning whether we know we're doing it or not. And so every day we have to have a good set of problems that we think are important to solve, and we have to believe those problems are worth solving, and that is like what constitutes like a career. So my first question to you would be, are you chasing problems that are interesting to you? Or, because you mentioned earlier, we got off on a subject of ADHD and how you can't get through something unless it's interesting to you. So to that point, are you headed towards a career path where you can solve problems you're interested in solving, that you think are valuable in solving? That's my first question.
Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, I've completed one, I don't even know what to call it, I guess school. This is not where I currently reside, so I feel comfortable sharing this. I trained in a school in Nashville for audio engineering. I've known that I loved audio engineering since 8th grade when I signed on to be a tech at my church. And the passion just kind of grew from there. And by my senior year, I was lead tech for that tech team. And eventually I went and figured I'd make a career out of that because I loved it so much. Completed the training program, worked at a studio for a year in Nashville. Then COVID hit, and no artists were really cutting albums anymore. All the studios closed.
No more locations. No more. I don't know. I don't want to know if you're there or if you're still there. I'm just realizing you mentioned a place. No locations here, please.
Okay. I can keep that totally, no more. The studio that I worked at closed, and I was out of a job. And so, I moved around. I'll just say, I'm not going to give any locations, like you said. I moved around for a while and settled somewhere. I worked some odd jobs just to make money, and then found a second audio engineering job that I thought was going to be pretty long-term career. And then that establishment told me that they could no longer pay me due to budget cuts, and they cut me from employment, and that led me to my current job that I've had for about 6 months. So it's like I do know what I want to do, but both times that I've set out to do it, it just hasn't worked.
Yeah, so this is what I was just thinking, and then Kai Lucas Zachary put this in the chat, so I'll give it to them. They say, COVID messed up a lot for a lot of people's jobs. It messed up a lot of the economy. Of course, that's not news, but it's true. So I hope that's at least encouraging to you on some level. Of course, it's not a beautiful thing. It's not a beautiful picture, but in so many ways, we are still rebounding from the effects of COVID on the economy, and a lot of people are without work. So the downside of that is that, yeah, we are not through those problems yet. I still wonder if we've seen the worst of it. Part of me wonders if it will get worse. Maybe that's just because I'm responsible for my kids and I think ahead. I kind of have to think further ahead than I did before I had kids. So maybe that's just me being a worried father. But part of me wonders if we've seen how bad it's going to get. And then there's a beautiful side of that picture too. I'm not just being doom and gloom. The beautiful side of that picture is that that's not a reflection on your ability or your values. So if you have a skill or if you have a problem that you're really good at solving, just because you're getting a lot of resistance right now, that's no reflection on your ability to solve those problems. So in other words, the best you can do is keep trying. And it sounds like you're a really resilient, really quick thinking, really responsive kind of problem solver. You mentioned you've moved a bunch and you've tried a lot of different things. That sounds to me like someone who quickly collects themselves after a setback and tries something else. That's what life takes in this kind of climate where the economy is tumultuous and jobs are hard to find. I have so many friends right now who are dealing with having to get a job they don't love when they've been chasing a dream or a dream job for many years. They're having to support themselves with just a 9 to 5 that they don't necessarily care about in order to keep themselves afloat. And I think that is not a sign of giving up. I think that's a sign of you supporting your dreams. Your dream will always be there. You might have to come in and out of seasons of life is a series of up and downs. You know, people say life is a roller coaster. You getting, I don't know your current situation, but let's just go to a scenario where you might have to get a job you don't love or like at all. Even if it came to that, that wouldn't be you kissing your dream goodbye necessarily. It could be you're supporting your dream by keeping yourself alive. And sometimes life takes that from us. Sometimes life insists that we solve some problems we can solve that aren't our favorite problems in order to sustain that dream that we have. So, again, I'm dancing a bit, but the point is that just because you get a job, even if you have to get a job you don't like for a time, if it comes to that, and I know this isn't the question you asked, but I'm going to a very black and white place. I'm saying, like, let's say you keep hitting more problems. Just keep on keeping on. Even if you have to get a job at McDonald's, or, you know, do something you just absolutely don't feel any passion towards. The passion comes from the dream. The dream comes from what you find beautiful in life. It seems what you find beautiful in life is supporting art, some kind of art. As an audio engineer, we haven't gotten specific, but if you're passionate about audio engineering, you find beauty in art, and you're an engineer who builds infrastructure for art. And we have to every day, again, to bring it back to the nihilism thing, I think the best recipe for nihilism is to find something in life that's beautiful to you, that you can care for, and also find problems that you're good at solving that are also interesting to you in solving. And that's not to say that we won't have to solve problems we don't like to solve sometimes. We might have to. I've had to do tons of that in my life, and it won't always be easy, especially in this time. Right now, it's not an easy time. The world is going through a lot of crazy stuff, you know, and that's not. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just saying that's not you. That's just where we are. And I know it's not easy what I'm saying, but I wonder what that sounds like to you.
Yeah. It, I don't know. I won't get specific with religion or anything like that, but let's just say I believe that there's a plan for everyone, right? And so it's difficult for me to parse that with finding what I love and being repeatedly denied access to it. So I know that it's not my fault that COVID hit, and I know that it's not my fault that my most recent career job couldn't afford to keep paying me. But it's like, when is it my turn to just get the career and relax and have a stable life for once, I guess?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned being hired at a studio in one of the world's most competitive audio engineering markets. I don't want to know what year that was. You mentioned it was within like a COVID era. I mean, that could have been any year between now and 3 years ago. I suppose technically I should have toasted you because you said Nashville, but there's so many people that come here for audio engineering, and I don't know how long you were here. That I suppose I should have toasted you, but I guess I have your consent to carry on.
100%, yeah.
And I felt like it wasn't specific enough to be worth hanging up at this point in the call because we've been talking for a long while now. But my point is, you were hired in a city for a job that's almost impossible to get. It is almost impossible to get that kind of job here, to be hired at a studio for something like that. Not to mention, it happened during one of the world's most uncertain times. So again, I say to you, that wasn't you. That was the world. That was entropy. And there was a lot of entropy at that time. Does that help your confidence at all?
Yeah. It's more like, I guess to put it in a sentence, I'm mad at the world because I keep getting shot down. If I had to sum it up, it's like, I know that I can do it. It's never my time, it feels like.
I know that feeling. I don't want to compare our situations, but just to make it clear to you that I know that feeling, and that I can empathize with it. And I hear the emotion in what you're saying. I know what it feels like to be denied things. I know what it feels like to have things stolen from me that I created. The world can be so brutal. And you're in your early 20s, and I'm telling you that right now, I'm not telling, this part isn't something you don't know already, but it's just a reminder that you are, your generation got some of the worst of it, some of the worst of the COVID repercussions. Your generation got some of the worst of that. Now, that's not entirely bad news. I believe that we are coming into a time here very soon. I mean, look, like, when was the last time we had a lockdown? When was the last time we had to, force people out of buildings because of COVID? The point is, things are getting better. We're learning how to deal with it. We're learning how to curb it. And I fully believe that your generation will have a massive rebound by being able to say how old you are when these things happened. In some ways, I think that's like not a get out of jail free card or something like that, or like you're going to get some things you don't deserve that are like you're going to have some, unjustified advantage over everybody else because of it. But I think that your generation will be acknowledged as having gone through, I mean, like there were a lot of people who couldn't even graduate because of COVID. And how do you think a college professor looks at that when they're bringing on a new PhD student, a new PhD candidate? You think they're going to deny them that PhD just because their education was disrupted by a virus? What I'm trying to say is I think that the market, at least in our free markets in the US and other places that have free markets, at least those places, there are smart people hiring and smart people teaching in schools who are able to see what happened to people your age when the virus hit. So I know right now it feels like you're just hitting constant roadblocks, but what I'm trying to say is I think it's about to get a lot better. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year or two you find some momentum that just seems to come out of nowhere after what you've just been through.
Well, that would certainly be a blessing.
What I'm trying to tell you is don't give up. Now is the time to try harder than ever. When was the last time you watched Rocky 1? One of my favorite movies.
Yeah, mine too.
Watch Rocky 1. This is the best time to watch Rocky 1. Go watch Rocky 1. Watch all the Rockies. Rocky 1's probably the best. But, I mean, that movie's not just great because of the screenplay and the direction and the acting. It's great because of where Sylvester Stallone was in his career. He lost everything. He was almost homeless, living in, I think it was Studio City or West Hollywood. I can't remember where he lived in LA. I think it was one of those two. I know they're not anywhere near each other, but I think it was one of those two places he was living in. And he famously, have you ever heard that story about how he got that movie made? He was a no-name actor, writer, director, and there was no way in hell he should have made that movie. Have you heard that story?
I have not, no.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this, and maybe this is a good place to go off on. Sylvester Stallone was broke. He was like selling furniture to pay rent. He was a no-name actor. He had never had, he was also a writer, but he had never had his screenplays bought or produced. He was an aspiring director, but he'd never directed anything. He was just a guy who'd been in a couple little commercials, and he was renting an apartment that he couldn't afford in Los Angeles just before Rocky was made. And he had this script called Rocky. And he was shopping it around and just kept getting no's because he was a no-name and nobody was going to give him money to make this crazy boxing movie that he was going to star in because he was a no-name. He had no consumer confidence as a personal brand. He had no personal brand. And so he's selling furniture to pay rent. And he gets so desperate while he's trying to sell this script that he ends up having to sell his dog. He sells his dog, sells it to pay rent. He's literally living in an apartment with no furniture, and it comes to the point where he has to sell he has no furniture and no dog, and all he has is this script he wrote. And he shows up, he has a meeting to pitch this script again, and I believe the story goes, he didn't have a meeting with was it Universal that produced it? I'm going to butcher parts of this, but this story is true. He showed up at the studio without a meeting, waited in the lobby, and said, I want to talk to such and such. I can't remember these names. He's like, I need to talk to such and such. He had no meeting. And they were like, do you have an appointment? He was like, no, but I'm going to wait. And he had enough of a name, I guess, where people would recognize his name, but he was not the guy was broke. And he waited in the lobby until someone came down because he became a nuisance that he was waiting in the lobby. And so the person came down and was like, what do you want? And he's like, you're going to read this script and you're going to make it. And he leaves it with them and they read the script. They call him a couple weeks later and they're like, hey, this is a great script. We're going to make it. and we're gonna have such and such star in it, some other person, and we're gonna have this person direct it. And he was like, no deal. I'm starring in it and I'm directing it. And they're like, we can't do that. Like, you're a nobody. And he's like, no deal. Hangs up. A couple weeks go by, they call back and they're like, okay, you can star in it, but we're still gonna let such and such direct it. No deal. I'm not doing it. I have to direct this movie. This guy has nothing. Sylvester Stallone has nothing. He's like, no deal. Hangs up. A month goes by, they call back and they're like, all right, you can star in it and you can direct it. And that was the beginning of Sylvester Stallone's career.
Wow.
And the dog that's in the movie, the dog, and this is the cherry on top. The dog in Rocky was his personal dog that he bought back with the funds from Rocky and put the dog in the movie. He got his dog back and put it in the movie. That's his dog he sold. So the point is, like, and Rocky is the perfect script for that story. Like, that was Sylvester Stallone's story. He was getting beaten up to a bloody pulp, and there was no sign of hope. And he was just like, nope, I know what I can do. I know what I'm supposed to do, and I'm not giving up. And I'm not gonna, settle for not acting in it. I'm not gonna settle for not directing in it. This is my story. This is me. Rocky wasn't just Rocky. Rocky was Sylvester. He's like, nobody's gonna tell this story. This is my story. And he didn't give up, even after he sold all of his furniture and his dog. And, it's a very romantic story. It doesn't, it's a very grandiose story. He was very lucky, but, the point is, life will beat the shit out of you. And you gotta take the punches and not let it get to you.
For sure. Yeah.
So maybe watch Rocky.
Yeah, for real, with new context.
And I'm not claiming that any of this stuff is a magic wand. I wish I had a magic wand I could wave for you. Fresh out of batteries. But yeah, it's the hardest part of doing this stream. I talk to so many people in dire straits, don't know what to do, and I'm not an expert in anything, but I feel you. I feel where you are. I'm here to tell you, don't give up. Keep going. I want to remind you, you got a very competitive job in one of the world's most competitive markets for that role in that field. And it happened at a really horrible time in the world. And that's not a reflection on your ability. So don't let that beat point in your story deflate you. I say, fight back, bring it back. Do whatever you got to do to maybe work double hard. Maybe keep in mind COVID hit at a really unfortunate time in your career and work double hard. Work COVID hard. Maybe cut back in some other areas, whether it's entertainment or seeing less friends. Work COVID hard against, COVID took something from you. That wasn't you that lost what you lost. COVID punched you. Punch COVID back.
For sure.
Boom boom. Such a great song.
Real.
I really appreciate you. You've been very real tonight. I hope this was constructive for you in any way. I blew a fire hose of books at you. That must have hurt. I'm sorry. But tried my best to do it. That was a Hail Mary. I don't know what it is you need to hear, but would love to get some kind of update from you in the coming weeks. You can call again anytime, but but if you get an update for us, we'd love to hear from you.
For sure. Last thing I just want to say real quick, I love the Malk on the desk. You were one of the first people I ever saw on the internet. That was one of the first videos, so just want to call back to my childhood for sure.
This was made by a fan in 2009, I think it was, or 2010. I've taken very good care of it. I can't remember who made it, but this thing is awesome.
I
It's got
love it.
nutrition facts on the back. I love it too. All right, call
Amazing.
again anytime. Hoping for a good update. Watch Rocky.
Yes,
Pump you up.
yes, sir.
Good night.
Good night.
Wow. All right, we're going to jump right back into another one. We went long on that one, and I didn't mention much from the chat. I'm sorry. I was so absorbed into that call, and now I've missed the call that was coming in, so we'll wait for them to call back. But to the caller, I just want to say, don't give up hope. This is a really difficult time for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are struggling with self-confidence right now because of what COVID has done to the world, and I think a lot of people are forgetting that it's not them. It's like we're still dealing with COVID, even though it's not infecting people as much anymore.
COVID, even though it's not infecting.
Hello, thanks for calling. That caller hung up. Hello, thanks for calling.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Check, check.
Hello?
Check, check. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Must have had a little lag there. Can we start with your age and a brief intro?
Sure.
I believe you said 23.
What did you say?
Sorry, there's some kind of interference or lag or something. Are you in a good area? I'm on a fiber connection. Are you in a good area? Call signal area?
I'm not in a good enough area for this, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I'm getting a lot of interference, but we'll try to carry on. I didn't get your age.
Okay.
I heard something in your 20s. That's good enough.
Yeah, 23.
And what's the reason for the call?
Well, there's some things last call that came up that I could relate to, and before a few separate times. Ring any bells, but there's not a specific reason that tonight just kind of felt right to call, and I feel like there's been, things in life, there's an accumulation of kind of stressors that I've been dealing with for a while, and able to handle mostly, but it's just kind of slowly building up a little bit more overwhelming, and I feel like I'm nearing a pivotal point where I can kind of push forward and make a lot of progress on a lot of different things, but my energy has just been really drained and tired, and so I guess I can start specifically with what I related to last call and kind of go off from there. I'm in a relationship of about 6.5 years now, and graduated last year. Got into a kind of difficult situation where I was my values were sort of challenged because I had there was someone in that last year that basically I guess love bombed me, and kind of made me question the values of monogamy and polyamory, and so I tried to handle that as best as I could, and I got ghosted by the person who did that, and they also
had BPD, which is something I haven't wanted to attribute their behavior to. But I've been listening to this live for quite a while now, and it seems to come up at least in enough instances where I feel like it's something I should at least read into more or learn more about. So that's, I guess, what I meant with the connection. And so obviously you don't need to give me the whole list of books again. I have that as a resource in the chat. But that was really bothering me for a long time. It was hard to get that person off my mind, even though I'm in a strong relationship with someone that I care deeply about and want to spend the rest of my life with. But my partner, and she's not open to an open relationship at all. It's just not her thing, which I can understand. But I guess there's some tension there because, can you still hear me okay?
I gotcha. Much clearer than before.
I just want to make sure. Yeah, I guess there's some tension with my current relationship, as good as it is and has improved in the past. It's just built on pretty unique foundation that's hard to, it's some really strong, so even like traumatic beginnings. And it's amazing how it's turned out so positive and blossomed into something that's completely different from where it started. But for instance, there's a lot to go over, I guess, with that context. So I guess I can say I was born into like a strongly fundamentalist house, and moved around quite a bit as a kid up until high school, and was strongly identified with my religion up until kind of mid-high school years. And that's when I met my current partner, and she was kind of the antithesis of everything that I believed then, or thought I believed or was raised in. She was, smoking, and not religious whatsoever. And I kind of, the whole friend group was like that, and so my beliefs then were challenged. And after a year or two of really bad depression and cognitive dissonance and anxiety, I ended up in the mental hospital at one point. I realized that I no longer believed what I was brought up believing, and kind of had a huge paradigm shift. And that happened after the mental hospital, but before I started dating her. And I actually started dating her a few months after I lost my faith, or realized that I no longer believe that. And so in terms of like my core identity, I haven't had much time independent of religion at first, or independent of my relationship now, to really do any self-exploration or kind of and in addition to that, it was around that time, about eight or so years ago now, when I first, I still identified as strongly religious and believed that smoking weed was wrong, but I still did it anyway because I was feeling depressed and anxious, and it was better than self-harm, which is something that I had done occasionally. Could argue it's a form of self-harm, but the the first time I ever smoked, I was with my current partner and one of her friends, and her friend started making sexual moves on me, which I had no prior experience with. And so, in short, it's basically it induced kind of like just a really bad paranoia, and it basically was a sexual assault, but it's not what most people think of when they hear those words. And I had a crush on my partner at that point before we started dating, so that was very confusing for me.
Did your current partner sexual assaulted you? I didn't understand that part.
Her friend did before we started dating.
I see.
Yeah, there's a lot of like small details like that add to the kind of confusion, but both on my end and also explaining and relating to other people.
Right.
So that's something that I would consider, more distant trauma that I've been able to heal from mostly and grow from. But it's not like that goes away, it still is. It's kind of absorbed into your subconscious and your decision making, and I think that's one of the reasons why whenever I, which isn't often now, but whenever I do try to smoke marijuana again for like self-reflection or relaxation, it just makes me anxious, and so I don't really do it often, if ever. And it's just more recently, in regard to the situation with the person I met in college who I'd say I was very attracted to even while I was in a relationship. That was very challenging because it was the first time since all those years ago. That was the first time since then that I really had to undergo something that kind of excruciating in terms of reconciling two opposing feelings or beliefs in me. And it's been, I knew that person I had a crush on for about 6 months, and it's been about 6 months since then. And I didn't think it would end this way, or that it would have affected me this way, and that it's still someone I think about often, and just don't really know what to do with, because I'm not used to that kind of lack of closure, even though I've had to move on from like friend groups and people for quite a while now. Like as a kid, I would move a lot with my dad's work, or I would have, I guess, the big worldview move from a fundamentalist, black and white sort of religious way of looking at the world to now it's more, I guess, agnostic and ambivalent. But hold on, there's people coming up, so I don't want to. I'm walking past some people, so I don't want to keep talking for maybe 10 seconds.
It's okay.
So, yeah.
I'm sensing there's a lot to this story for you. I can hear it in your voice. I can hear it. Sounds like you're shaken up a bit. What's beneath all this for you? What is at the... I mean, we're covering a lot of different stuff here. Maybe there isn't one word you could sum it up to. I mean, you're talking about fundamentalist deconversion. You're talking about being love bombed. You're talking about overcoming self-harm, being sexually assaulted. What is the what is at the core of all? I mean, what am I hearing? And I'm hearing something in your voice. What are you feeling?
It's sort of like it's all like fragmented in my psyche, and that it is not like anything that's clearly emerging from all of that. It just kind of manifests in, I guess, making it harder for me to focus, or maybe it's just that because it's so much, I tend to try to make easier choices that are less difficult, and maybe procrastinate on what I want to be doing or should be doing. And just, I don't know, I've noticed that I have earphones in most of the day, and it makes me feel better, but I get a lot less done, and then I feel worse at the end of the day. It's just, I'm trying to, address it as head on as I can, and I wouldn't say that I'm consciously making an effort to run away from it, but it definitely feels like I prefer distractions, and that there's so much that I want to do and that I feel able to do if I were to be more disciplined or steady. But I guess it's just hard to know where to. I know it doesn't really matter where I start. I just have to start somewhere. But I feel like because, at least in part, because of how black and white that feels sometimes, of just picking one singular thing and focusing on that, and at the exclusion of other things. Even if that might be what's best, even if I feel more or less as confident as I can be in anything else that it's the right thing to focus on, it's hard to stay focused on that enough to, I guess, make it a pillar of my day-to-day life and kind of integrate it into a sense of self.
Aunt Your Gang Girl from the chat wants to know if you're feeling burned out.
You could say that. It feels, I mean, I certainly have a reason to feel burnt out, but it feels slightly more different than that. In that, I'm just, it's like a blend between burnt out and overwhelmed, and just kind of, maybe stunned or dazed just by the, there's been a lot of changes with my work schedule recently. I recently went, and I had a really big year in terms of life transitions. I graduated college, which is a big chapter of, early 20s. Moved out of my parents' house, which is a big chapter in early 20s. I moved in with my girlfriend for the first time. That was all earlier this year, and I started a new job. And there's a bunch of stuff like that obviously is going to take up a lot of real estate in terms of what I have to focus on and what is immediately has to get done to make those changes a reality. And but in that, I've kind of lost the ability to prioritize my personal needs, or at least have the energy to put what I want to be doing ahead of what's easy to do, or feels good, but ultimately is a distraction, like with what I consume online, or just generally do instead of things that would make me feel better, like, I don't know, doing the dishes, cleaning the apartment, looking at health appointments at different places, even that, not even speaking about how I would want to work on drawing or filming or audio recording and just general art, collage stuff, which is what my main interest is, but I haven't been able to make anything that I'm proud of or feel that I've engaged with the creative process in a really long time because of everything that's going on.
Hunter Gang Girl is full of good thoughts tonight. She says to you, when was the last time you did something that nurtured your spirit, soul, sense of self? Things that fuel you and fill you up are important. You can't run on empty forever.
Yeah. Well, I guess the good news is that I just did something that I just went on a hike. That's why the signal was spotty earlier. I was coming down from a butte.
Great. How was that?
It was good. I want to go hiking more for sure. It definitely kind of gives me a cleaner feeling in life, and obviously anything to get outside and out of a 500 foot apartment is good, especially around this time of year. And I don't know, it's strange because it feels like I'm doing enough to get by. I've always, even, well, not all the time. I don't like using the kind of idea of high functioning or low functioning anything, because I feel like that invalidates the kind of root of the issue. But I guess it's still easy for me to kind of do what's I'm supposed to do, at least some of the time, to make myself feel better. Like I know the basics and I do them most of the time, but there's some things that I just get like slip through the cracks. Like I might not shower for a couple weeks, or I might spend a series of days just sitting inside without doing anything active, and then it'll just kind of like build up. And going outside helps, but then there's also the downside of now I'm more physically tired, and that's kind of like a temporary fix, I guess, for now, because once the hike's over, kind of more lethargic. More recently, that could be with other things like disrupted or irregular sleep, which I know is a big thing for mental health.
Sounds like you're struggling with motivation. Is that accurate? And if so, were you always that way?
Yeah, if I had to narrow it down, motivation is probably the biggest thing. I'm able to kind of plan ahead and know what I want to do, and even be able to do it mostly. But if I don't get out of bed early in the morning, I lose any momentum that I would have had, and maybe I fall behind that way. I wasn't always, without motivation. In 2018 or so, I was really motivated and created like a 12 step morning routine where I'd wake up at maybe like 5:30 or 6 and do a smorgasbord of stuff before 9 a.m. And I was able to do that for 2 months, and some variation of that for longer. But once college started, that didn't become realistic at all anymore.
Mm-hmm. What I'm getting at is, so first of all, I also grew up in an exceptionally fundamentalist climate and pulled myself out of that uh, later than a lot of people do. Uh, for those who do get out of it, that is. And the point is, I was rocked for years by what's the point of any of this? What's the point in trying? I also struggled with motivation for some time while I was trying to find meaning in the world. In other words, I grew up like really entrenched, like a fundamentalist. I'm not sure quite cuts it for my story. It was something else, but fundamentalism fits at least. And you know, what is fundamentalism? Well, not just fun. What do these things offer people? They offer people a bunch of things, and I'm not here to say that any of them are invaluable. I'm not here to dog on anybody's belief system or anything like that. But for the sake of this conversation, what it made me realize, that experience, is that the Bible offers, amongst other things, some of the core things it offers people. Some of the core things it offers people is a simple explanation for why struggle is valuable. I'm thinking of verses like, your body is a living temple. And this is a verse that's often used to say, like, don't trash your body. Exercise. Take care of yourself. Don't drink too much. Don't eat too much. Like, your body's a living temple. This is something I heard all the time. It was beat into me. And that's just one example. You could take the Ten Commandments as an example of that as well. There's so many. I'm not trying to say that the entire Bible is just a way to prop up a human life, but I now fully believe that so many things, not the entire thing, but so many things from the Bible are there to give people reason to do things they don't want to do, and cement that into some kind of higher meaning or purpose so that they're motivated to actually do it. And so I see this time and time again, and I went through it myself. And in some ways, I still have to remind myself of these things to this day, that when you come out of that kind of environment, now it's on you to find that reason, to find that motivation. But the reason is still there. In other words, I worked really hard when coming out of all that stuff to not throw baby out with the bathwater, because I recognized that there are things, I couldn't identify many things from the Bible outside of slavery and things like this that demanded I throw them out. In other words, like, what I came to recognize is that the Bible, and the Bible's not alone in this, of course, so many religious books have very similar teachings. They're not the same books. Again, I'm not trying to disrespect people's religions, but so many of our religious books have strangely similar teachings. Not strange, actually, because so many of them come from Abrahamic tradition. So they're all the product of the descendants of Abraham. So it shouldn't surprise us that all of these ideas kind of stem from similar philosophy and ideology. But the point is that it took a long time for me to realize this, and I don't know where you are in your journey, but I'm hoping it's an encouraging thought to you that I'm now in a place with the Bible where, I read the Bible now more than I ever did before, and I read it twice all the way through from Genesis to Revelations by the time I was 18. I read it a lot growing up because it was just beat into me as a kid. but now I read it with a different kind of appreciation because it's like this historical, like ancient, like I read it with this ancient appreciation. Like it's fascinating. Like these were the very first ideas people recorded, especially in the Torah. If you're reading Torah, the Torah is like probably my favorite part of the Bible because it's like these are the first humans writing, words in this way, laws in this way. Yeah, there's a lot of problematic parts, like again, like slavery and like things they did to gay people and stuff. Like there's a lot of problems, but like they had a lot of great solutions for some of life's most challenging problems, like dealing with motivation, dealing with self-care, dealing with others who hurt you. And so I guess what I'm getting at is I wonder if, is it possible you've thrown baby out with bathwater or can you appreciate, do you still appreciate what the Bible can offer you in terms of like, in other words, what I'm trying to say is like, I've landed in this place with the Bible where I've realized like I grew up so entrenched in the Bible that now I'm in a place where like, I'm probably not going to understand any other philosophical religious text in the way that I understand the Bible because I grew up with it. And so in so many ways, the Bible is already like a part of my operating system. And so I've just embraced that, even though I'm not a fundamentalist anymore. I don't go to church or anything. Like I'm an existentialist. I don't claim to know what God is. I think I'm not going to get into any of that because that's not what I'm here to do. But the point is like, I know what it feels like to pull yourself out of some dogma, and it sounds like what you grew up in. And I wonder if you still can appreciate what's special about the Bible in terms of what it has to say about dealing with suffering and dealing with the more challenging aspects of life, because those have proven to be pretty valuable to me over time.
Yeah. It's actually funny in a way that you bring that up, because in one of our previous calls way back, you brought up that phrase of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, and if I remember correctly, in that call you said I had done a decent job of not throwing out the baby with the bathwater and still having I don't know, I would say that I still have an appreciation for the Bible and the teachings that I grew up with. For like unrelated reasons, I read parts of the Bible yesterday, and
Okay.
in college I took a Bible as literature class, which I found
Cool.
tremendously helpful and insightful. And I guess in response to there being nuggets of what to do about motivation and self-care in the Bible, it just doesn't, at least where I'm at right now, doesn't connect in the same way, which might be a blend of upbringing, might be a blend of just where I'm at depression-wise and overall mood-wise. It's definitely something that I wanted to and do revisit it sometimes. I went to Bible camp maybe about half a dozen times growing up, and we were able to get CDs of the sermons, and so I have a folder of maybe over 50 half-hour to hour-long messages of what I was being told between ages 10 and 15, and I sometimes revisit those, which is obviously quite different than reading the biblical text directly and looking at it through different a literary perspective or social or spiritual perspective.
I hear that. Yeah. So maybe because you studied the Bible in an academic sense, it won't do the same thing for you as it does for me. I mean, I never studied it in a class, but I've studied it as a adherent to that belief system, and then as someone who stepped out of it, and just independently, never in a class. So maybe to me it has more sentimental value than it does to you. But what I'm hearing is the voice of someone who, whose operating system has been, you've got a fragmented hard drive. You know, in 10 years ago, before in old computers, you periodically had to defragment your hard drive, which is something we don't have to do anymore because now we use solid state hard drives that with no moving parts. But used to be, you might remember this, you used to have to defrag. It was called defrag your hard drive like 4 times a year, or your computer would get slow and nothing would work right. And like, what I'm hearing is the voice of you used the word fragmented earlier, actually, now that I'm remembering. So like, it sounds like you're going through a process of defragmenting what happened. You're defragging yourself right now. That might take time, and part of that process is kind of putting the pieces back together. I mean, that's what defragmenting means, I guess. That's what it is. So part of that would, I'm trying to think of some things that might be helpful in doing that. For me, the defragmenting process was, part of that was like understanding the Bible better. That was really helpful for me. But for you, maybe it's like finding a life philosophy that gives you the motivation you had before. If you grew up in fundamentalism, that's like, I would say that's much more than a philosophy. It's definitely a philosophy, but it's like, it's something else too that I'm not quite sure how to say. I would say a lot of it is very cultish. I'm not going to say all of it, but a lot of fundamentalism is very cultish, very culty. I don't like throwing that word around, and I don't use that word often, and I'm not trying to offend people. I'm not saying if you're a fundamentalist, you're in a cult, but a lot of it, in my experience, is very culty. And so if you grew up in anything like that, the defragging might take a lot longer than it does some people. Some people leave the fold, and it takes nothing from them. They're just kind of like, yeah, like maybe a month or so. They're like, oh, I can't believe I wasted so much time, and that's not really, and then they're like, just rebound. For me, it was a long time. For you, it might be a long time. But what I hear is the voice of someone who's looking for some. It sounds like you're looking to the stars. You're looking for your place in the world. You want to have some cohesive framework for purpose, meaning, drive.
Yeah. A couple things there, I guess, is one of the previous calls and then calls with people with similar-ish stories to mine. I learned about the book Leaving the Fold through this, and I read a little bit of it, but it ended up being a little bit too on the nose at first. So I kind of put it back on the shelf, and I haven't felt ready to get into it in that much detail yet, but I've still been searching for something that feels, I guess, organic and pulls enough from tradition, but isn't it's still original, not derivative. I want to like have a way of looking at things that feels like mine, but still is guided by something other than me. And so in this process, I've grown to be more open and inquisitive about other religions or spiritual aspects. And one of the, I'm not sure if this will go anywhere, but you said looking to the stars. And one of the things that I've started paying more attention to is just the moon cycle.
There
in
you
terms
go.
of, full moon and new moon.
That stuff's interesting.
Yeah. It's, consistent. Obviously it's grounded in reality, but there's a multitude of spiritual traditions associated with it across the globe, because it's obviously a universal kind of experience. And there's some science ideas behind it too, like on the full moon, if you're a mammal, you're more likely to survive against nocturnal predators because you have more moonlight than on the new moon when it's dark and you're at a disadvantage. But there's obviously, I can't go to a book and read about that and be like, yep, that's what I believe, that works for me, that feels right. Something that I have to keep experimenting with and see if any of it sticks.
That's right.
And that's really I don't know, part of me still feels silly, I guess, for trying with something like that, but I don't know.
Trying with something like what?
I don't know, it feels a little I don't want to, I don't want to force it, I guess, or try to, find I don't know, I guess it relates in some ways to existentialism and nihilism, and that might be trying to find spiritualism or romance in anything I can kind of latch onto. But I don't know. I could also just be the kind of doubt that's become a big part of my life in terms of obviously you understand with growing up in a fundamentalist framework that you essentially go from believing something 100%, 110%. There's not even a percentage because it's everything and it's real and you're never going to question it and it's the truth. And then somehow you end up on the other side, and it's not even that the world's upside down; it's that there's not a world anymore.
Well, yeah, I'm resonating with a lot of what you're saying. Makes me wonder more about what you went through. Unfortunately, tonight we're pretty much out of time, so we don't have time to get much into it. I'm not hanging up on you here, but the point is that before I say this next part, I want to just acknowledge, I know that so many different people from different walks of life watch these streams. I know that devout fundamentalists watch these streams. I know that people from the LDS Church watch these streams. I know I've got some followers of Islamic faith. I know I have followers. This stream is going to attract very different kinds of people, and I know that I say a lot of things on here about my personal experiences with the churches I went to, and I just want to just acknowledge that I have nothing but respect for people's faith, and I'm not here to knock anybody's faith. So I just try to always give that disclaimer whenever this comes up, that I'm not dogging people's faiths, but I'm going to be real with people about my own experiences because that's what we're here to do. And I'll be real. I'm going to be real, guys. So when I go to these places, I'm not telling people what I think you should think. I have landed in a very, what I think is a very beautiful place, considering what I grew up in. So many people who grew up in what I grew up in throw everything out the window and become atheists and just nihilistic and all this stuff. It's not about me, but the point to you, the caller, is for whatever it's worth, I find a lot of beauty in not just existentialism, but I would consider myself a pantheist existentialist, meaning that it's not just about your life and what you do with your time here, but also your place in the world. In other words, like I hold a very big box for what I think God is, and I don't claim to think God is a person or a being or a he or a she. God might just be God might be the Big Bang. I don't know. Like what? I don't know. I don't think we're supposed to know. I'm not telling you what I think you ought to think, but I'm resonating with so much of what you're saying, and I feel like our stories were very similar. So I'm just giving to you some things that were very helpful to me about 12 years ago, 10 years ago, thoughts that gave me stuff I didn't know existed, and you seem pretty well read. So I don't know if that's helpful to you or not, or something you've already come across. But to me, not just existentialism, but also the pantheist aspect to it, which I know is like I wish there was a different word for it because it sounds so hocus pocusy. I hate that word. Like it sounds so like I just picture myself with like a tiny little cappuccino cup and my pinky up. It's just like so dumb. Like who came up with these words? Yeah. But the etymology of that word is interesting. And I think that those two things go hand in hand really, really well. Like I think existentialism is about being a human, and I think pantheism is just a theory of how ecosystems work, and humans are a part of that ecosystem. So in other words, I don't think a religious or philosophical framework works unless it addresses how at least you as a human will spend your time, but also it has to address your place in the universe. And that's why I'm mentioning that, is it sounds like you kind of lost your place in the universe. And for me, it's a really helpful, beautiful, inspiring, motivating picture to picture myself as one of the most advanced mammals on the planet, the most advanced mammal on the planet. I'm not saying I'm the best human, but like I'm a part of the most advanced animal family on the planet. I know people don't like to think of themselves as animals, so I'm not calling us all animals, but for simplistic terms, we're a part of ecosystems, and that's a beautiful picture to me, because we take that for granted because we've invented civilizations, and you told me you're stuck in your house a lot of the times. You find it hard to get out. You just went on your first hike. I think that's a great step to get out into nature. I know it's hard to do that. Yeah, I wish I was out in nature more. It's hard for me to do so many things. Ever since I've become a dad, my life is about my kids now. So I know what that's like to struggle to get outside and get fresh air and go hiking. I love hiking, but there's never time to do it. But yeah, like the existentialism to me is really motivating, but not in every sense, because it doesn't give me my place in the world as a part of an ecosystem. And I don't know if you're familiar with those two philosophies together combined, but you might even just read the Wikipedia articles on both of those separately. And I don't know, I could be off, but for me that was really valuable.
Is there a name you're familiar with that's specifically for that intersection?
Unfortunately, I really wish there was. Can we start one? Can we start one? I really wish there was, because I really hate telling. I don't tell anybody I'm a pantheist existentialist. It's like one of them. Like I can't think of a worse thing to admit to. It sounds so horrible. You're like, what does that mean? You're an axe murderer? That's what it sounds like. It sounds like I'm saying I'm a psychopath or something. I don't know. But yeah, I wish there was a simpler term. Unfortunately, there's not. It's not very popular. Existentialism is popular, but I can't think of anybody. I know that there must be pantheist existentialists, but I don't know if it's even a thing. But for those two philosophies together for me were really valuable, because I realized coming out of Christianity that I needed something that wasn't just going to guide my decisions, because I my morals haven't changed. Like I still hold at least 80% of the same morals I had before, maybe 95%. of the same morals I had before. I as a person changed very little after that deconversion, but I realized I needed something to guide. I needed a reason. I needed a reason to stay the same person. And I found it after several years in both of those philosophies, and neither one of them by themselves did quite the whole thing for me, but together they have been very valuable, I would say.
Yeah, that resonate with a lot of that.
In so many ways, I really envy the people who just grow up with really, dare I say, average religious experiences, because it seems so nice. I had a very traumatic experience, so I am incapable of ever going back. I'm so sorry to say that. Like, I never will be able to. I'm either damned to hell, or I don't know what that means. But you know, I don't judge anybody for their beliefs. I'm just trying to be charitable here to just acknowledge that, like, I don't judge people. I realize there's Christians and religious people listening to this. So, you know, my point is, I'm not claiming to be right, but this is what's worked for me, and I'm mentioning it to you because a lot of your story sounds very reminiscent of things that I experienced. I don't know what it's like to be sexually assaulted, but you know, and so many things you talked about I don't resonate with, but a lot of it I do, and I've tried to talk about some things that were helpful for me. I'll mention a book. This book I actually meant to mention to the first caller, and it slipped. I forgot to. I told them I was going to talk about it, and then I forgot to because we got off on a tangent. But it seems relevant to you too, so I'll mention it now. If the previous caller is listening, this is the book I told you I was going to mention, and then I forgot to. I've mentioned this book before. It's a book I recently finished. It's got a funny name. It's called Existential Kink. It's by Carolyn Elliott. It's called Existential Kink, Unmask Your Shadow and Embrace Your Power. This is a book about... it kind of likens our... what would you call it? It kind of likens our trauma responses to a kink and gives you a framework for overcoming it. It kind of claims that after trauma, we develop coping mechanisms or responses or ways of behaving that become comfortable for us because it keeps us from having to relive the trauma. It kind of helps. It's kind of like a Band-Aid. So like, you know, I'm trusting I'm going to avoid giving specific examples for a couple of reasons, but you know, if something traumatic happens, something about our experience and existence and our decision making changes, or we develop some new habit, and that is a response to the trauma, and that becomes like a kink. Carolyn Elliott likens it to BDSM. She talks about 50 Shades of Grey, and this is like a best-selling book, one of the record-setting best-selling book about painful sex. That's why it's called a kink. This is like something people aren't really open about, but there's this whole community of people that like painful sex, and it's a kink. And you know, it's not just BDSM, but it's the most black and white example. And she says that like she likens our trauma responses to a kink, and the whole book is about learning to laugh at that, in the same way that people laugh at their kinks in the bedroom. And she claims that this is a powerful way for overcoming our trauma responses and getting better results in life, finding the motivation we want, and ultimately setting better responses for the trauma that are more productive for us. This is a very powerful book, I think. She actually does workshops, existential kink workshops, where you can go pay to be with her for, I think it's like 5 days, and she'll work with a group of people through their existential kinks. So it's like a whole framework. It's not just a book, but a very interesting book. This is one book. This might be the only book I would recommend listening to and not reading it, because her voice, the way she reads it, the author reads it, she's just got such a great way of reading it. It's so, you can't help but like laughing while you're listening to her read it. Great narration, and I really, I don't often, I don't think I've ever said this, but this one I would definitely listen to and not read it, because you get a whole other thing from it just from listening to her voice. So, yeah, Existential Kink, you might check that out.
Yeah, I've heard you recommend it before. I haven't been, uh, I guess, been resistant to the idea a little bit, but on the audiobook might actually work better for my experience too.
Right.
I don't know. Whenever I think about kinks, and it brings and like that aspect of shame, it kind of makes me think about the shame that's used in the kind of fundamentalist framework, and in that kind of like negative way, even though it doesn't necessarily have to be understood in that way. I guess it's just
right.
kind of like the association.
Well, we're out of time. We have to wind down the stream. Is there anything else that would make this a good call? Last minute, any final thoughts that we didn't get to? I hate to rush off, but I really do need to shut the stream down for the night. What would make this a good call?
I think this is good. I think I just needed to talk to somebody and get grounded. This has helped with that.
Well, you can call again here anytime. Lines are always open to you. There's no limit to how many times you can call. I would love to get some kind of good update from you. We're always here. So if you ever need to chat again about this same thing or an update or a different thing, if the plot thickens, feel free to call again anytime.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for calling and being real. Take care.
Bye.
Good night. All right, chat. I didn't get to much in the chat tonight. Those calls beckoned all of my attention, and there were some really good thoughts that I've seen that I meant to get to. I even forgot a couple book recommendations, so I'm sorry. Of course, the chat is always here for the callers as a resource. Usually they revisit it the next day, so I appreciate everybody listening here with me tonight and offering their experiences and thoughts. That's what makes this place beautiful. You guys are awesome. We do this stream every week on Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern. There is a Discord server that's completely free. It's a beautiful community of people that hang out, and some people talk about heavy stuff, and some people just talk about video games. Some people play video games. Some people, there's a book club channel. Some people read books together and talk about their thoughts on them. So the Anonymous Live server link is in the video description if you want to check that out. Totally free. And yes, huge shout out to our mods. Tonight we had Easy Cheesy and Raymag. You guys are awesome. These two do a lot behind the scenes as well. Grateful for their time and support in this project. We would be nowhere without the mods. It'd be so difficult. So thank you to our mods. Thank you to the chat. And so yeah, we'll see you next Tuesday. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. I'm so excited about Thanksgiving, guys. I can barely contain myself. Oh my goodness. It's going to be wonderful. I'm having a deep fried turkey. I'm going to be with family. Oh my gosh. Give me a break. Can't wait. All right, guys. Enjoy your holiday. I will see you in a week. Take care. Good night.